Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 129 of Show Viewers. Today we'll be going over Chapter 7 of Haunted Peak entitled Mountains and Meat. Now this chapter honestly was a very good chapter. So we started off with, obviously, Miko coming up to the mountain to talk with Ebihara about possibly eating the meat like he did at the end of the last chapter. And we see that Ebihara mentioned about how he kind of scared him with him just randomly coming up there with the meat. And we see as Miko's preparing and all that, he's setting it up, and Ebihara's like, yo, bro, you're pretty good at this. And he's like, nah, my grandpa's knife's just really sharp. And then he mentions about how it might kind of suck because they don't have any yogurt or pepper to marinate it in. And he continues to chop it up and everything, and they end up pulling out a ramen flavor packet that Ebihara had, and he's like, we might put this on it. But, yeah. So we see as they just talk a little bit more and kind of get to understand one another. We see as Miko ends up revealing to Ebihara that he comes up here every day, and that people call him weird for it and everything, and that they say he should get down the mountain and get a girlfriend. And Ebihara's like, dang, that must have sucked, especially if it came from the person that you like, which it did. And we see as they kind of like, well, at least Miko kind of spills his guts to Ebihara. And we see as he talks about how his granddad had promised in the mountain after his death. And we see also as Ebihara's like, yeah, I didn't know you came down here all the time and watched out everything. So, yeah, you can have the mountain after I die as well. And then we also see as they talk a little bit more about the meat. They talk about how the person who hunts the meat up here and keeps the wild animals off. This has actually happened before. Miko told Ebihara that he comes up here every day. But yeah, he's talking and he's like, yeah, the person who goes up here, his name is Kipe Kaji, who is Momoji's grandfather. And he just mentions about how, yeah, he comes up here to keep all the wild animals off and that he lives on the property line and just kind of keeps the mountain safe. And so, yeah, that's how they end up getting the meat. We learned the name of the hunter. Like I said, that's not really important. But, yeah, and they just kind of discussed that a little bit more. Once again, discussing, like, why Miko goes up there and everything. And we see as ultimately they end up getting the meat prepared. And we see as Ebihara's eating at it gladly, but, Miko is not really eating it. And ultimately, Ebihara ends up offering it to him. He's like, yo, you want some of this meat? And Miko obviously does not end up taking it because Miko doesn't like game meat. And he shows, we actually see a flashback that the only reason he ever ate game meat with his grandfather while on the mountain was because he was with his grandfather, and that's just what he did. He wanted to be a man like his grandfather. And also prior, we saw when Ebihara was mentioning about how he just wanted to die up on the mountain, and how Ebihara actually mentions about how he acquired the mountain. We see that he talks about how he sold his condo in, I believe it was Tokyo, to acquire the mountain and everything like that. So we know how he got the means to buy the mountain. And but yeah, they just end up discussing this, and ultimately Miko denies the meat. He's like, I don't want any. And Ebihara's like, okay, I guess I'll bury it up here. Then Miko kind of freaks out a little. He's like, no, we can't bury it up here because wild animals will come here. And Miko's like, well, that'll be fine. But not Miko, but Ebihara's like, well, that'll be fine. And then Miko responds with, no, we can't do that because it's against my pride or something like that. And he's like, that's not what a real man would do. And Ebihara's like, what's the point in being a real man up here? What's the point of doing something you hate when it's completely free up here? That's why I'm up here, is to be completely free. And we see then as Miko asks, why do you wear the leaf on your face then if you're completely free? And he's like, if I remove the leaf, I would lose my freedom, because when I don't have the leaf on, I see that people can see my face, I feel self-conscious, and therefore I lose my freedom of mind and all of that. And I guess freedom of sanctity of mind. But yeah, so Ebihara's like, you don't have to do something you hate up here. It's just something you don't have to do. And we then see as when the meat, what was originally in the pan, we saw the meat. We then see as Miko is now envisioning Momoji on the pan. So we're kind of seeing as Miko is kind of locking in, realizing that Momoji's not that good of a person. And he's now seeing her as something he hates. Now, I might be looking a little too deep into the symbolism here, but he hated the meat. And then he looked back in the pan and he saw Momoji. So I presume he hates Momoji. And also prior in this chapter, when Ebihara had been talking about the girl that Miko likes, he was like, well, she can just shove it, really. She doesn't really matter, because Ebihara was like, yeah, the girl that you like might not like it when you get this mountain after I die, but he was like, that's not her, Miko was like, that's not her problem, she shouldn't care, that's my problem. So we see as Miko is actually kind of locking in. He's falling away from Momoji and actually seeing Momoji for more of what she is. He's kind of becoming, like, I guess, more disengaged with the world. However, he is kind of learning at the same time, becoming smarter. But yeah, so ultimately we see as Ebihara comes to the idea, yeah, I'll just throw it away in the trash disposal so we don't have to disgrace the mountain by burying the meat, nor hurt your pride by doing so. So ultimately he ends up throwing in a little trash bag, and we see that Miko kind of confronts Ebihara about being a victim of domestic violence. And he's like, how did you learn that? And he tells Ebihara about how the woman from the Susono inn had told him about it, and Ebihara was like, "Oh yeah, I did mention that to her." And they're trying to talk a little bit briefly more, and he's like, "Yeah, I was a victim. I was killed twice by my wife." Apparently, Ebihara has been killed somehow. Then we get a panel, which will probably be the thumbnail of him laying blood streaming from his head on the ground. So I'm really curious about what's going on here, because like Ebihara is, I presume he's a human. He looks human. He has a human face. He has a human body. So I don't know how he would have died twice. I don't know if it's like in a emotional. I mean, it can't be. He can't still be alive and even be like logical, because I can say like an emotional and also in a physical sense, or he could have been killed twice emotionally or something like that. But I don't really know, because Ebihara can't have died once physically if he's still here up on the mountain. So I'm really curious about how this is going. Maybe Ebihara is the vengeful spirit up on the mountain rather than a woman. I really don't know. Maybe his wife killed him and buried him up here, and this is his spirit going around trying to construct stuff. But that would be odd, because he's building stuff and he's having interactions with the physical world. So he's got to be a living person, because like he's having interactions that not only Miko is seeing, but like Momiji, Kipe Kaji. People have seen him doing his stuff and have seen him multiple times. So I don't think he's a supernatural being. I believe he's a human who's speaking figuratively about dying twice. But yeah, that's all it really was for Chapter 7 of Haunted Peak, entitled, once again, Mountains and Meat. And that's all I really have for episode 129 of Shelf Review. So thank you very much for watching.